Well, I'm going to go ahead and start because it's now the 1 o'clock bewitching hour, the 3 o'clock bewitching hour. Anyway, I want to welcome you all and those who are yet to come. This is the Urantia Book Society of Los Angeles, RUBLA. We are one of the local societies that are licensed by the Urantia Book Fellowship. I don't know if you know. Oh, look who's here. Welcome, Kay and Bill Cooper. In our fellowship, our society in Los Angeles dates back to 1957, and we've been pretty much continuous operation doing presentations since then. We do 4 presentations a year that are on Zoom, and then we do 2 that are in person. Used to be everything was in person, but now many more people can attend, like Kay and Bill Cooper. And many more speakers can come and speak to us, like Barry from Ireland. So it's been a great expansion. And these meetings that we have on Zoom can become quite intimate and quite personal, and you develop very deep friendships. So I know it would be nice if we were in person, but there's so much to be gained by opening it up to the world, literally the world now. So anyway, we do events that are crafted to inspire and educate and open lots of discussion and personal interaction for seekers everywhere. And if you would like to receive our quarterly notices, there'll be a big splashy picture on each one. Then add your email to this Zoom chat, and we'll make sure to include you in each mailing. Now, this is particularly important to me. The fact that we are associating with each other our minds, the Rancher book really puts a lot of stock on it. I'm going to read you a quote that really gets to the heart of it. It says, thus does the mind of one man augment its spiritual values by gaining much from the insight of the other. In this way, men enrich the soul by pooling their respective spiritual possessions. Likewise, in this same way, man is enabled to avoid that ever-present tendency to fall victim to distortion of vision, prejudice of viewpoint, and narrowness of judgment. Fear, envy, and conceit can be prevented only by the intimate contact with other minds. And so here we are, many other minds. So we'll have a feast. So in that same line, we encourage all seekers to associate with a Urantia Book study group. A study group, because the growth benefits of being with other minds in an intimate study group are manifold. On the invitation that you clicked on that brought you here, you'll see that we've provided a link to both in-person and Zoom study groups that are online at the fellowship. Then they include 2 study groups that are sponsored by people who are right here with us today. Mark, would you say hi, shake your hand so that they'll see you? And Phil is the host of another study group. They're here in the LA area, but they could be in China because you just fly through Zoom to where they are. And we have delightful study groups every week. We have a Wednesday night one by Phil and a Thursday night one by Mark, and you're all welcome. So just use the information that you see on the invitation, and boom, there you'll be there. Now, without any further from me, I want to have Phil.
Let me clarify. My study group is on the first and third Wednesday of each
Oh,
month.
sorry.
And another thing I might as well mention, whenever I host a Zoom meeting such as today, I use my personal Zoom link. So it's the same every time. So if you can't find it for some reason, just find one of the previous ones and you can use that one.
And Phil is our vice president and chairman of the education committee. And Mark is our treasurer. And so I wanted to turn this over to Phil to do the introduction of our speaker for today.
Okay. Well, the speaker today is Barry Culligan, who is right here today already. And I could do no better than to read what's on the flyer because I think it does do a nice job of describing who Barry is. Well, he's the eldest of 8 and the father of 2. That's an important feature. He's a reader from Ireland and now living with his family in Oughterard. Did I get that right, Barry?
Strangely enough, no.
Yeah,
Uachtarard, it's called.
I thought it was
Uachtar,
Oughterard, but how do you say it?
Uachtarard. So it means like the
Oughterard.
high cream.
Okay.
Uachtar is cream, and ard is high. So Uachtarard is high cream.
And a
Okay.
lovely river flows through the city.
That's right. The Curragh.
Anyway, Barry earned his master's in intercultural theology from Trinity College, Dublin, and he first encountered the teachings of the Urantia book around the year 2000 while studying theology. He's an avid student and evangel of the teachers. He's devoted himself to writing and talking about the book for the last 2 decades. He was active giving lectures on the teaching during COVID and acted as MC for one of the 24-hour Urantiathons. He's given talks at conferences in the UK and more recently in the Netherlands. Presently, he publishes his reflections on Substack. He is a writer and musician, songwriter, poet, storyteller, and devoted student of the fifth epical revelation. And so take it over, Barry. It's all yours. Now you can share your screen or whatever you want to do on that score.
Super. Thanks very much, Phil, for having me. I want to say thank you very much to everybody for making this happen. I'm delighted to get an opportunity to meet you all and to speak with you. I would ask for a small prayer that I can learn to speak slowly during this presentation because I can speak fast,
Yeah, that's
especially
a
when I
good
get
idea.
excited.
We should have a prayer.
Yeah,
Anybody want to volunteer to give a prayer?
I'm the speaker. I might give it a go.
Okay.
That's okay with you guys?
Oh,
Yes.
please.
Yeah. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for bringing together this family of light bearers. We pray that you commune with our souls as we endeavor to search out your truths. Strengthen our eyes that we might see truth, and our ears that we might hear it, and our tongues that we may speak it. Guide us throughout our lives and in these moments to bring us closer to you and closer to one another, and that through our union we might bring your light to the world, to show the truth, the beauty, and goodness of your nature, and thereby lift up everyone with us. Thank you, Father, for the revelation. Thank you, Father, for my brothers and sisters. And thank you, Father, for a moment where we can sit together and share the insights of the great gifts you have given us. Amen.
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 Okay. Okay. So I've done a few. I've done a PowerPoint presentation, and I'll use that as a springboard for talking our way through this thing, if that's okay with you guys.
Lovely.
Okay, great. Okay. Now screen sharing. So can you guys see that
Mhm.
Strange Preachers Ministry thing?
Yes,
Yes, we
It all looks
can.
okay?
perfect.
Okay, super. So
Okay.
yeah, I use the moniker Strange Preacher. There's reasons for that. We won't go into them right now. But I developed this little logo to kind of capture um, the teachings in many ways. You know, these are the fundamental truths of the teachings: truth, beauty, and goodness, and family, perfection, and service in the heart of it all. You know, God. Um, so today we're looking at uh, toward a philosophy of living, the journey towards that. How does that look like? So I picked up a few pictures of some philosophers, you know, because thinking is a key part of the whole philosophical endeavor. And I captured some key statements from the Urantia book to help us explore this idea. So I'm sure you'll all be familiar with them, but I'm just going to read them out anyway, so that we can begin to frame the conversation. The religious challenge of this age is that those far-seeing and forward-looking men and women of spiritual insight who will dare to construct a new and appealing philosophy of living out of the enlarged and exquisitely integrated modern concepts, cosmic truth, universe beauty, and divine goodness. Such a new and righteous vision of morality would attract all that is good in the mind of man and challenge that which is best in the human soul. I find this very interesting, you know, because in many ways it's a call to action for the wider readership. It's a challenge to us to construct a new and appealing philosophy, you know, and that becomes our evangelical platform, if you will, to bring the teachings to the wider recognition of the world, you know, to be able to present a new and appealing philosophy, like a story of our existence, and that would enlighten and challenge others. And it's it kind of sets us up separate from previous events, you know, in terms of how we do religion, you know. And to kind of help us with that, we're given this very cool promise. It's almost a prophetic revelation. A new and fuller revelation of the religion of Jesus is destined to conquer an empire of materialistic secularism and to overthrow a world sway of mechanistic naturalism. Urantia is now quivering on the very brink of one of its most amazing and enthralling epochs of social readjustment, moral quickening, and spiritual enlightenment. Okay, so now we know that this revelation is got to be it's going to be a fundamental part of this conquering of a materialistic empire. And we know that from this line that we are supposed to use the book to help construct philosophy, which will flip the current paradigms in this planet. And once we do that, then we'll be in a position to hand over to the world those spirit-born souls who will supply the leadership and the inspiration requisite for the social, moral, economic, and political reorganization of the world. Big challenges, big revelation, great opportunity. Now, here is our context. The world is filled with lost souls, not in the theological sense, but lost in the directional meaning, wandering about in confusion amongst the isms and cults of a frustrated philosophic era. Too few have learned how to install philosophy of living in the place of religious authority. And that's a very interesting one because it puts the onus of religious living, or it takes it away from the institution and puts it in the individual. And we can see the wisdom in that, given how our experience over the last few decades, maybe even a few centuries, have shown profound weaknesses that exist within the institutions, the institute. So we have begun to, we can see how our institutions are flawed and are weak and are imperfect. And sometimes despicably so, God knows, unfortunately. And the problem is, for many people, they tend to throw the baby out with the bathwater just because the institution is corrupt. It means that everything that they do is corrupt. And we see that with Christianity. We see a couple of bad preachers or a couple of bad priests, and we say, "Oh, look, that you can sign the whole thing to throw the baby out with the bathwater," as I say, throw Jesus out with Christianity, and this puts us in a situation where we have the responsibility of finding God for ourselves and of developing principles and philosophies that allow us to live religiously in the world. We have the responsibility to find God, to know God, to love God, to serve God. No institution can do that for us. Uh, we have to do that. It's like trying to lose weight. Nobody else can lose weight for me. I have to do the work there. And when it comes to knowing God, nobody else can know God for me. I have to know God personally. That's too important a thing to outsource to others. But we know from the revelation that so often with Christianity, not only is it uh, like a religion about Jesus, it's a religion that's secondhand, and people are not close enough to know their God, and they very much need to know their God. So we have a world of spiritually hungry people out there that are eager to hear a new story, an insightful vision of the universe that can inspire them and challenge them and liberate them. And we have the genetic materials we need to create that in this great revelation that we have today. Now, Jesus was very eager to kind of point out the importance of a philosophy of life. One day while talking with Gonad, he said, "You see, Gonad, what a new God in spirit. It failed clearly to discover him in mind. The Jews discovered God in mind, largely failed to know him in spirit. Today, the Buddhists flounder about in a philosophy while my people are piteously enslaved to the fear of a God without a saving philosophy of life and liberty. You have a philosophy without a God. The Jews have a God, but are largely without a philosophy of living as related thereto." So this is something that we're called upon to construct, and it's referred to over and over throughout the teachings. And we know from the elements that I took out earlier that it is a significant aspect of the forward momentum of this revelation. So, how does one live in the light of the living God? See, that's the thing. That's our question. We see with the Jews a fear of a God. They didn't know how to live with that, to cope with that. Whereas we've got a revelation of a living and loving God. How do we live in the light of that truth? Now, we take this reference here. Without a worthy goal, life becomes aimless and unprofitable, and much unhappiness results. Jesus' discourse at the ordination of the 12 constitutes a master philosophy of life. So in terms of our attempt to construct a philosophy of life and a philosophy of living, we will definitely find a lot of the materials that we need in the life and teachings of Jesus. As we know, they literally say right there that during the ordination ceremony, he provided the fundamentals for that. Okay, so without a worthy goal, life becomes aimless and unprofitable and much unfinished results. This is a key feature to any philosophy. We need a worthy goal. Here's old Friedrich Nietzsche. He who has a why to live can bear almost anyhow. I first read that in Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. Beautiful book. And he uses it so well, this particular why. He who has a why, he who has a reason, he who has a purpose to live can bear with almost anyhow. And we see it today in many entrepreneur workshops. They talk about goal-oriented behaviors. The goal doesn't change, but the path does. So when you're trying to manufacture something and the supplier doesn't turn up, well, then what do you have to do? You find another way. If your goal is to get to the other side of the mountain, but the bridge is gone, what do you have to do? The goal doesn't change. The why doesn't change. And we see in the work of Rodin this idea of how the goal is so fundamentally important. So we're going to reflect on the goals that can shape our thinking and guide our action. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and finding these, all other things essential to eternal survival shall be secured therewith. This kingdom of which you preach is God within you. So when I think of seek first the kingdom, that to me is looking for your why, looking for your reason, your purpose, your finding God and his righteousness. Okay? They become key goals that shape our thinking. Now, another goal that the Urantia book points to us, which I kind of surprised me, was the supreme purpose of life is the development of a majestic and well-balanced personality. I like that. I really like that. The supreme purpose of life is the development of a majestic and well-balanced personality. And we know from looking at Jesus that he had succeeded in this exact thing. He had developed a majestic and well-balanced personality. So the next addendum or thing we can add into our quest in terms of constructing a philosophy of living, one of the most important things in human living is to find out what Jesus believed, to discover his ideals, and to strive for the achievement of his exalted life purpose. All human knowledge, that which is of greatest value is to know the religious life of Jesus and how he lived it. So that's going to help us to construct this philosophy that we're talking about. His life will. So, what did Jesus believe? That we are all God's children. What were his ideals? Be you perfect even as your Father in paradise is perfect, and love one another as I have loved you. They're incredible invitations. What was his exalted life purpose? To reveal the nature, character, and love of the Father, to lead man to God, and to reveal God to man. Now we have some solid whys, things to shape us, our lives. The development of a majestic and well-balanced personality, and to reveal the nature and character and love of the Father, and to lead man to God, and to reveal God to man. Now, these things can be pulled together in action. The next question then, once we have those goals, is how do we do this? How do we accomplish these things? The first steps, self-mastery. This is essential. Self-mastery is the key that opens the door to paradise adventure. Without question, it is life's first great challenge. Failure in this endeavor proves success in any other. So it's that pivotal an element, and that it should be one of our key goals in our philosophy, in manifesting our philosophy. Self-mastery, according to the teachings, is a journey inward in the task of self-understanding, self-conquest, and self-mastery. Now, there's a lot I could say on all these issues, but I don't have time for it tonight. But it is something that I would like to explore during the workshops next July, perhaps. Or maybe if somebody wants to talk about these at another time, we can arrange a Zoom thing or a chat about them. But I will lightly touch upon them today, but I won't go into them deeply. But it does suffice to point out that in the teachings, they give us these solid tips in terms of how we're supposed to affect self-mastery, in terms of the spiritually conquering the belligerent self. And the final element, after those things, self-understanding, self-conquest, and self-mastery, self-bestowed. It's a life of service. It's gifting one's life to the world. And we find tremendous fulfillment in that. There's a unity in our nature when we ready to finally give ourselves to the world, if you will. This particular process, this changing, has many names. Theosis is one, deification, divinization is another, but they all mean the same thing: becoming godlike or becoming like God. So self-mastery necessitates a magnificent battle against the greatest foe, the belligerent self. And we have a lot of tools that we can use to help us defeat that self and to bring it into alignment with divine ideals. In the life of Jesus, we can distill a master philosophy. So, a philosophy of life offers us a way to interpret and to make sense of existence, and also a way to live in the world. It enhances the art of living by illuminating principles and ideals. Principles are the impersonal, fundamental frameworks and structures on which reality is built. Ideals are the ever-expanding and illuminating values whose growth we can personally experience in time. Ideals are the goals or the spiritual lures through which we aim, towards which we aim, and in the realization of which experience the sweet satisfaction of attainment. Principles frame the laws by which we may all live and through which we can ascend. Principles comprise the impersonal dimension of deity, while ideals comprise the personal and experiential dimension of deity. Ideals are the alluring goals of eternity, the values of which we can experience in time. To live in the absence of principles and ideals is to live in spiritual darkness. I was walking through town there recently, and I met a young lad that used to work for me years ago. He was a very, very nice kid, tall, good-looking, hard-working, smart, musical. But when I bumped into him the other day, I could see from a distance that he was having a bad day, and he had, when I got close to him, I discovered that he's been living homeless and struggling with alcohol. I was heartbroken for him, because he was such a nice guy. But while I was watching him, I just realized that, the poor fella, he didn't have any principles that he was adhering to, any ideals, He was living in such darkness, literally living under a bush uptown there, and I felt so sorry for him, and it really kind of pounded home the importance of having principles, you know, uh, that will help you build a better life and help you climb out of the dark corners in which we can sometimes find ourselves, Virtue. Virtue is righteousness. If you check out paper 16 there, virtue is acquired through the voluntary and progressive conformity with the perfection ideals of eternity. So, a huge element of the teachings that I've been noticing is this push towards virtue, towards alignment with divine ideals, principles, and that as you do that, as you pursue perfection, you increase your sense of peace, your sense of power over yourself, and what you can actually contribute to your community and to your family. Now, philosophy wouldn't be much if it didn't help us explore the importance of liberty and true liberty. Okay? So, true liberty from within the Arendtian context involves the progressive identification and incorporation of truth, which is ever centered in the realms of spirit values. Conversely, failure to identify with spirit values results in the loss of true liberty. There's some very profound elements associated with this I want to explore here. There was a writer called Auguste Sabatier, and he wrote a book. He was a French theologian, and he wrote a book called The Religions of Authority and the Religion of the Spirit, which went on to inspire another guy called Ernest Fremont Tittle to write a book of the same name, which became a source book for the Urantia book. And in his book, he had a lot of cool lines, but this one really stuck with me. He said, the duty duty is the substance of liberty, and liberty is the form of duty. Now, the Arenti book spends considerable amount of ink exploring duty and its importance. We won't have time to go into it today, but it is a very important subject. Now, I remember when I read that, I was just bouncing around in my mind for a long time, and I was reading the Arenti book one day, and I was thinking of this. Religion is to morality as love is to duty, as sonship is to servitude, as essence is to substance. And when I saw that, I kind of thought, good, love is to duty. Began to think about what Sabatier said, and then I changed it. Love is the substance of liberty, and liberty is the form of love. And to me, that's a very profound truth, because we can see when like the Arenti book talks about something like anger, and gives anger as an example of as anger increases, self-control decreases. There's an inverse proportion going on there. And when it comes to love, as love increases, actual self-control increases. There's a direct correlation there. So when we get caught up in things like anger or jealousy or envy or hate, we are actually losing liberty. We're losing our divine identity. Our material nature is gaining the upper hand. But once love is in the driving seat, it is what actually establishes us in our true nature, in our true divine nature, and in our true liberty. And it's a beautiful thing. Love is the substance of liberty. Liberty is the form of love.
Mm.
Now, with Jesus, we get an incredible example, and he is the one that he chooses the hard way. He never wanted to. He wasn't a man for taking shortcuts. Um, Jesus was a man of pride and self-respect. He was proud of the fact that the house of Joseph has never received alms, and we cannot eat another's bread as long as I have strong arms and my brothers can labor. He was unafraid of hardship. He never allowed it to rob him of dignity and self-respect. And I think that's an important element to add to our philosophy. He would never use hardship as an excuse to justify not doing the right thing. For him, doing the right thing was the only thing, even if it was hard, even if it cost him his life, even if it meant hardship for his entire family. And that is a man of principle, a man determined to see it through. And we need to aspire to that. The way he chose to live validates the saying, the road to heaven feels like hell, but the road to hell feels like heaven. Acquiring righteousness might be hard, but for Jesus, a life without righteousness is no life at all. And I think, growing up as he did, with the huge challenges he had with the 8 brothers and sisters and left on his own, when he realized that the importance of living a righteous life, even under difficult circumstances, you could see then as he got older how he could say, what does it profit a man if he gain the whole world and lose his soul? Righteousness for Jesus is the expression of his soul. He could have, with his fingers, lifted his whole family out of grinding poverty. But that would have involved shortcuts, cheating, dishonesty, unfairness. And to him, this was too high a cost, even to spare his family from hardship. He understood better than anyone that there are no royal roads, shortcuts, or easy paths to paradise. He resisted the rewards of dishonest achievement and instead set his heart upon the later returns inherent in honest endeavour. Not only that, he led his whole family by that example. Jesus didn't come that we might have an easy life. He came that by his example, we might be so empowered as to be able to face a hard life and bear it with dignity and honour. So, three snares of a lion. So, this is kind of like when it comes to a philosophy, that there's so many things that we can take from it. Like a personal philosophy is it's almost like a personal religion. You know, you construct it as you go along, and as your life changes, it changes. You update it. But there are certain challenges we face in life, and this is the three snares of Belial. And I thought it would be a good way to use this to retro engineer principles that would help us to live more effectively in the world. Now, one would be forgiven for thinking that sex, drugs, and rock and roll was invented in California. It wasn't. It's been around for a very, very long time. So if you go back to the Dead Sea Scrolls here, you would find the three snares of Belial. And they are known as fornication, pollution of the temple, and wealth. So sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Pollution of the temple is the body. That's taking drugs, alcohol, booze, heroin, whatever is your gig, you know. And of course, we all know what fornication is. And wealth then is the lure of riches and the excesses and decadence associated with them. So these have been seen as the undoing of many of an individual for aeons and aeons and aeons, you know. And consequently, I kind of got it into my head, you know, how could we, if these are the snares, then what are the liberators? If these things cause us to trip, what are the things that will help us stand upright and move forward, you know? So instead of the three snares, I thought about the three emancipators. So when we start off with the drugs element, the counter to that is ultimately it's temperance, it's self-control, you know? As we aspire to self-control and achieve self-control, the tendency to veer off into excessive self-indulgence peters away, you know. Temperance is an ideal towards which we can aim and which through consistent practice we can succeed in. And it will help us avoid many of the pitfalls that people fall into. The second element then is modesty. With riches often comes insane levels of self-indulgence when it comes to like massive houses and like huge yachts and you know all these excesses, fancy clothes, like ridiculously like 57 Bentleys. You see this with sports stars, like you know they don't know what to do with their money, just spend it on expensive things, as opposed to understanding that they are the stewards of great wealth, you know, which we're taught in the Uranthy book, and that they are supposed to be using this wealth for the enhancement of their fellows and not just for their own self-glorification. You know, so modesty is the what I would call the opposite of unadulterated greed, and using that as a guiding ideal would shape our existence, I think, in a very positive direction. And last, of course, is chastity. And I don't mean chastity like in complete abstinence. You know, I don't believe that that's right or healthy, and the Urantia book itself specifically states that it's not. But at the same time, there are excesses that can be associated when it comes to sexual decadence and depravity, whatever. So that there is a healthy way of approaching that. It is a very, very powerful. The sex urge is an incredibly powerful drive, and it needs very, very careful control because it can lead us into all sorts of disastrous scenarios. And we wouldn't want that, you know. We most certainly wouldn't want that. Now, the epilogue. Let me see.
Mhm.
So, we couldn't do a philosophy of living without some mention of Rodin. Okay. Successful living is nothing more or less than the art of the mastery of dependable techniques for solving common problems. A philosophy of living. Can you? I don't know. Can anybody see the thing I'm reading here? But um, anyway, a philosophy of living then is a way to approach recurring life situations. In its sense, a philosophy of living is like a personally tailored algorithm that reflects one's ideals. It is how one will choose to handle certain trying situations in a very real sense. Your life is the shadow cast by your ideals. Life's real challenges are seldom mere physical endurance tests. More often, they are tests of moral character. Our angels repeatedly test our dignity and honor. They pound our egos, not maliciously, but to help us discover the true values of life. Those fundamental realities that are more than age abiding, the realization of which brings consolation, liberation, and inspiration. They take away only those things they feel might become obstacles to the attainment of our greatest good. The false idols to which we often become so attached, and the loss of which occasions so much sorrow. As growing and evolving beings, we have to contend with changes both in ourselves and in our environment. And to do so successfully involves considerable cognitive effort. The fruit of this effort will be the tried and trusted techniques for dealing successfully with the challenges of living. This ultimately culminates in the cultural phenomenon of the wisdom traditions, the spiritual heritage of the ages. However, as the ages change, so too does the accepted wisdom. While it is right to reverence tradition, we are also admonished not to make false idols out of it either. The received wisdom may not always be equal to new challenges, and certain revelations can radically change the landscape of meaning, such that the old maps that have long guided the masses are found to be inadequate. Consequently, we find these words in the teachings. Your philosophy struggles for emancipation from dogma and tradition. Presently, things have evolved so much and so fast that we are finding that we are forced to recalibrate every few years, not just every few generations. Our philosophies will, therefore, inevitably evolve over time, even in a single lifetime. Like the gospel hits different when you're 5 and when you're 50 and when you're 105. The duties that are associated with your particular station in life, they change. When it comes to dealing with life's challenges, we are not given a step-by-step guide on how to deal with every issue. That would be impossible. Instead, we are encouraged to figure things out for ourselves. And to do this, we are expected to apply certain principles and consider each event in the light of our ideals. Consequently, we come to realize that life is experimental as much as it is experiential. If we are going to get good at this living business, then we need to learn from experience. We are forced to hypothesize, test, review, adjust, and try again. The only real failure in life is the failure to learn from experience.
Barry? Oh,
Yes.
the screen you were sharing was blank, but it's now up.
Oh, sorry about that. Um, okay, I'll stop sharing now. Okay, so 10:45. How was that for you?
Oh,
That's very good.
marvelous. Very well laid out, very clear. Could follow it very
Yep.
well. Thank you.
You're very
Yes,
welcome.
thank
Thank
you.
you for having me. Giving me the chance to speak.
Okay, well, there must be some questions and comments, and we have enough here to have our hand up if you want to talk. One way or the other. There's the digital hand, and there's the other way, the old way. Just hold your hand up. So, yeah, go ahead, Kay,
It's Bill.
and
Bill Cooper. Hi, Bill.
Hey,
Bill.
everybody. Lots of familiar faces here, a few not so familiar. Glad to get to know you. Glad to know the ones I do know. In love with you. Hey, let's hug, okay? What I wanted to say, though, before I got off on that lovely little segue, is I have, in looking at this question of philosophy of living and our encouragement, almost a mandate of developing our own philosophy of living, looked a lot at values, which I consider not just values, because there are bad values as well as good values, looking at the higher values. But I looked a lot at Rodin. Rodin's got a lot to say. And one of the things he said that struck me interestingly was that Jesus' religion had filled in a missing part of his philosophy. And what it filled in was the why for him. He knew what to do. His philosophy, his Greek philosophy from Egypt, told him what was the wise and good thing to do. But it was missing any meaningful reason for doing it. So I looked at that and I said, okay, well, you could say the reason for doing it is to be able to join God in God's adventure of what God is doing in this age. That's kind of motivating to me. It says the future is not going to be boring, that there are fantastic things out there waiting for us to help God do. Okay, that's good. It also, our Urantia book tells us, kind of slips it in, doesn't make a big issue of it, but kind of tells us that God has in mind a very responsible future for each of us. I said, wow, now that is a why as well. The why there is you need to be ready to do these things. God may even have in mind for you to do some of the things that the Paradise Sons are presently doing in the outer space levels. And God, the Urantia book says, won't delay giving you responsibility any longer than you need. Now, frankly, we all from this planet need a lot. So don't expect things of substantial responsibility right away, but it's the why that Rodin discovered in that. And he said, when I put your religion together with my philosophy and your reason for doing it, his religion gave that reason. It is a masterful personal philosophy of living. Do these good things because it prepares you to be God's partner. That isn't what he said, that's what Bill said. But that's my interpretation of what he said. That's what's actually happening, is we are becoming God's partners as soon as we're ready and willing. So Rodin clarified that for me, and I would encourage you, to take another look at him, because Rodin made a bunch of comments about the way Jesus led his religious life. Just a long, long list of what Jesus did. And then Jesus, the book gives us a list of what Jesus did in his prayer life. So you can tell what Jesus was thinking about as he was going to his Father. Those are immensely valuable resources to us that we can pass over rather quickly and not realize what a treasure they are. Enough said. Hey, isn't it a wonderful book? Yeah.
Sounds like you know it well.
Thanks a lot.
I'm not much of a scholar on the Urantia book, but
Well,
I think a lot about what it is telling us. I question it. I say, what does that mean? And Spirit comes back and gives me an idea. I kind of like the idea that Spirit's speaking to me, answering my questions even during this life. I like the idea, too, that we can all do that. It's not a special talent. It is only an engagement, a serious engagement. So, student in that regard, yeah, I guess so.
I guess so.
All
Of
right,
course.
let's see. I think Sherry has her hand up. No?
I do, but Cecilia
I
was
guess
before me.
yeah, I
Uh-huh.
didn't see your
Yeah.
hand is sort of off. Yes, go ahead, Cecilia.
Thank you. I hate following Bill. Anyway, the last statement you made, a real failure is only the failure to change. And I'm wondering, Barry, is there more that you can say about that? Because I know more and more I'm realizing that it's about embracing even things I don't want to do and doing them anyway. And
Yeah.
but maybe there's more you can say about that.
Yeah. So what I said was the only failure is the failure to learn, or at least that's what I meant to
To
say, the
learn.
failure
Okay,
to
yes.
learn from experience, you know.
From experience,
So
yes.
yeah, so if we're not learning from experience, it's virtually impossible to progress, you know. And I was saying that life is experimental. We find ourselves in challenging situations and we try this and we try that, you know, and we see what works, we see what doesn't work. And once we do that, once we kind of take ourselves to task and try to learn the lesson of the that the universe is trying to tell us, you know,
Mhm.
then we can move on to the next lesson the universe is going to want to tell us, you know. And I have found that, and I'm sure many of you here have seen it happen, that that you'll be caught in a cycle when it comes to trying to learn a lesson until you finally get it, and then that pattern breaks. It's gone from your life, like, you know, and you go on to the next phase of the angels have kind of mapped out for your development. Um, but yeah, it's about learning from experience, you know, and yeah, like it's I work with people with dementia, and I
Mm.
see that, you know, that a lot of those guys, they can't learn from experience anymore. You know, whatever's in there is in there, and nothing new is coming in. You know, but for us, we have that opportunity. We have the chance to sit down and take stock and figure out our role and the role of others, and what our expectations can be for ourselves and of others, and to develop appropriate strategies for dealing with challenging and trying situations. You know, does that help?
Yes. I have been noticing whenever I resist, things seem to get harder. And sometimes what I pray for is just to help me move past that resistance and
Yeah,
and then having to do what I don't want to do. But then it works out. It's like taking the action. The interesting
yeah,
is taking the action is like, oh, that was much better than resisting. I can tell you that.
yeah. I've seen one of the things I was learning along the way is like I'm not in control of all the
Yes.
things in the world, you know, and I have to understand that there's going to be loads of situations where I'm not in control, and I have to roll with that, you know, and the universe will at times lean into that. It'll just keep piling on, piling on, piling on. You're like, oh, but I
Oh,
know I've learned, like, the universe says, don't worry, we'll square you away at the end. We know that you have to do loads of overtime this week, you know, but we'll get you, we'll clear your slate, and there'll be a weekend comes up where the phone doesn't ring, nobody calls, and you know, you suddenly have all the space to yourself to breathe and to reconnect and to be made whole again, you know. But my thing is to learn not to object to the universe's plans and try to embrace it and trust that it has my good. In the end, it can see where the end point is that I can't see, and there's peace in that.
right.
When you reconcile with the universe, that you know I 100% believe that you have me, and that I can go into this moment and again and again, and until it resolves itself, you know, because the universe needs me in that space now. You know, it needs me in the place. It might be hard for me, but it needs me in the place, and it just says, and when you're done, then it'll say, right, well done, kid. Take you've earned your rest now. And it will, and I've seen it happen to me. And my wife has seen it happen. She's like, you're right, that happens. You know, when you actually go with it, then suddenly everything clears. Like, you know, it might take 3 months before things kind of get quiet, but then suddenly when you're all quiet out of the shuttle, you know, that you won't have as many challenges in a particular week, or things will be finally easier. But it's all about kind of learning to listen to the universe and to do your part and understand that the universe expects a lot from you, especially when you are a source of positivity and strength and encouragement. You know, they'll be putting you in places where that's needed, you know, and the part of that too for yourself and for any of us is to learn the spiritual recuperative practices so that we don't give away too much of ourselves, and we don't get lost in the battle, you know. When it comes to bearing the fruits of the spirit, The Serenity book talks about that. They talk about spiritual exhaustion as well, and building up spiritual energy. And when we look at something like fruits of the spirit, it's like patience and kindness and forbearance, and which is great. But when you run out of patience and you run out of kindness and you run out of forbearance, then how would you say, the less best version of yourself appears, and it's never good. So you have to be protective of yourself and of your resources, and learn to watch out for when you're running dangerously low, and to recuperate those losses from giving all the time.
Perfect.
Mm.
Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Barry, for that answer. I guess now Sherry has her hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, well, before I make my comment, I'll just say that I work with the Serenity Prayer daily,
Very
and most
good.
people here know it, but I've sort of altered it to be more specific. I don't ask just for the serenity to accept what I can't change. I say, give me the ability to accept what I cannot change. And in the second line, I'm getting, much more bold with God. I say, give me the courage, ways, and means to change what I can. So I've gotten, it's like, okay, if I'm really going to live this way, I'm going to get a little more specific and ask for even more, specific guidance on how to do this. So thank you for bringing that up, because it's been a lifesaver for me to little by little let go what I literally cannot change and have no control over, and just turn my focus to what I can. But what I really wanted to say, Barry, and thank you so much for this presentation, was I specifically came today because of the title, A Philosophy of Living. I am probably in very good company here, but I am always looking for effective ways to share this revelation with people. And I can't say that I've done a lot of, evangelizing. I sort of weave it into personal conversations a lot with people I work with, my friends. However, it's occurring to me that utilizing phrases such as a philosophy of living could be a very non-threatening, non-religious way of speaking to the great, great, great gift that this revelation provides us. And as we all know, there's nothing you could ever even imagine to ponder about human life here and beyond that the revelation doesn't speak to. So I just really appreciate the way you presented it, and adding your own experiential defining things to flesh out what the Urantia book is already telling us. You've made it more more accessible, at least to me, to take out, to take on the road, so to speak. So thank you for that. Thank you so much. And not trying to start a conversation or go down this rabbit hole, but I will just say one of the frustrations, and maybe the light just bulb hasn't gone on in me yet, but almost without fail, the minute I speak the word Jesus, I hear some laughter there. The minute I say the word Jesus, I can, even if someone doesn't verbally respond to me, I can say, uh-oh. I see immediate, like, you're just another Christian missionary trying to shove Jesus down my throat. And so I'm all, again, philosophy of living. And then to weave, and there's this new biography of Jesus. I've tried that approach, but I just wanted to say that I've taken notes, and I think this is being recorded, so I hope I can listen to it again at some future point. But you've definitely given me a new way to think, some new language to use in trying to share some of the more basic tenets of this revelation with people that may or may not have any spiritual background at all. So thank you very, very much. And thank you, Los Angeles Society, for hosting all of this. Thank you.
Sherry, would you repeat your prayer, your version of?
Yes. Let's see. God, give me the ability to accept what I cannot change. the courage, ways, and means to change what I can. And then I say, and the wisdom of discernment. So
Thank you. That's great. That's
same
really
meaning,
Amen.
just a little more specific. Thank you very much.
All right. I guess I put my hand up because I wanted to make an observation, I guess, or two that have come to me as I listened to and read over Barry's material. And one was that there's a difference between a philosophy of living and a philosophy of life. One is active, one sounds like a something that you're going to read. But a philosophy of living has got to be an active, everyday kind of always ready with at the to be utilized. So I guess I see a difference there between the living and life. The original thing that was, I think you quoted, was Jesus saying that too few people have been able to substitute a philosophy of living for dependence on a religious authority. And again, it's got to be a live thing. It's not something that they can write down for you. It's always a matter of in the moment, what does this situation require? So when people say to me, have a good day, I say, live a good day, because I'm not sure I'm going to be able to have a good day, but I'm sure I can live one. I can live a good day no matter what. So that's what I wanted to add to what we've been hearing here.
very good. Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, Doreen, you're up next.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Barry. That was excellent what you presented. So many ideas. We probably could talk forever on all these topics. But I want to say, all the things that people had said, there's nothing permanent but change. Because if you stop changing, you stagnate and then you just die inside. You don't even live. So that I realized, always. Anyway, I never thought if there is a God, and I was brought up atheist, if there's a God, I don't have to go through any institution, through another being to tell me about him. He could talk to me direct, right? And I was a young kid, and I thought, of course, that he's the most powerful thing, if he is. It was just a word for me, I didn't know anything about him. But when they say that the thought adjuster has a plan for your life, oh, yeah, they gave me hardship right away. Hardship, like I didn't want to live. I said, this is such a horrible world. This can't be. This can't be the only life that God has created. This group of people who are so horrible, killing each other, mean. And so I challenged God all along. And all of a sudden, one day, years and years, I was very young, 7 or 8, when I used to say these things. And years later, I said, if you are real, God, this is what I need. And I gave him a list, just values, nothing nothing material. And I'll be damned, and let it go. The only thing I say was the saving grace for me was living on the streets of New York City, because all the kids are on the streets and everybody plays with each other and nobody cares about anybody's personal life. So it was really wonderful. But as time went on, I started to realize, my goodness, everything I remembered, right, about 5 or 6 things I asked, values. For kindness and love, and to send me a person who would love their children and come from a loving family. So, and then all of a sudden, all of the things came to me. And then I used to challenge God more because I still didn't know him. I mean, things I realized somebody is listening to me, you know. And then I thought to myself, you know what? God, tell me about yourself. This is, you know, I was always led to go, there was like an intuition, knowing I should go here, I should do this. And was never, I had to think about it, I just knew. And I was led to a place where I said to my daughter, let's take dancing lessons in this other town because there's nobody in our town who knows anything about spirituality. And so we went to this school, and I'll be damned, right? And I didn't know anybody in this town. Right across the hallway, adjacent to the dance studio, was a sign went up, Institute for Spiritual Development. And I said, holy smokes, isn't that, it's like a knowing inside of yourself. And this is how my life was led. And so I one day, you know, they were teaching meditation and yoga. And yoga was easy for me, but meditation, I couldn't quiet my mind. So one day I came home from work and I sat down and I said, you know, God, why don't you just tell me about your nature? Bingo, the third eye opened up, a beautiful being appeared in front of me and smiled. And oh my God, he heard me. And after that, it was open. Oh, things happen, dozens of things. But I tell you, it's that personal experience of knowing God. Nobody could have ever told me about it. Nobody could have ever tried to convince me of it if I didn't experience everything personally. And I just grew and grew and grew. And I could tell you that I live in the city and I walk. So, you know, driving a car is different. I meet people everywhere, whether it's in an elevator, any place. I'll stop to ask people if they need help. I'll help them across the street. Whatever it is, I see what I could do. And I keep my eyes open. And wherever I am, the spirit brings somebody into me, you know, my personal self. And we begin talking about the Urantia all the time. It's the seraphim, and I know that's how they work outside. It's gone on for years, and I don't even have to say, God, you know, it automatic happens, and it's wonderful. And I'll just say one last thing. It's so funny because, you know, when you meet people, I followed what Jesus said as he passed by, and I thought that was the best advice. And I look at people with love, not judgment or anything like that. I could see with the eyes. What does the rest matter? You know, we're all living here imperfectly, but listen, we tried the best we can. And when I see, and that reflects to people, and they like it, and they come over to me, and they say, I knew I should talk to you. So one guy, I was sitting on a bench reading. I live right on the river, so there's a big park for miles and benches, and everybody comes and congregates there because it's so beautiful. And I'm reading a book on an arc bench, you know, it was shaped like an arc. And this other guy sitting at the other end. And, you know, it was about, I don't know, 45 minutes, an hour later, I said, oh, I better go home. You know, I had groceries with me. And I get up and he stops me and he said to me, you know what? He's just starts talking and he says, what do you do? And I said, oh, I study religious philosophy. And he says, well, I know all the philosophers there are. And we had a conversation, and I said, I bet there's one you haven't read. And he says, no, I'm telling you, I read. He says, what is it? And I said, the Urantia book. And he opens up his phone and he looks it up immediately. And he says, oh my God, I haven't read that. And we became friends. He didn't live around here. Anyway, so we met every year. He you know comes to visit his wife. She's an airline stewardess, so she works at a Newark airport. So he said to me 2 years later, he said, you know, Dorian, I want to tell you something. You know why I stopped you? I says, no, I have no idea. He says, a voice in my head said, you have to talk to this lady. I said, what? And he was really a sincere guy, really nice. I just loved his soul. You ever meet somebody that love from them just pours out, and I was so pulled in. It's like I just loved him automatically because it was there. And
You are so full of love. I'm not surprised that there was something happening there and
thank
and continues to happen through the rest of your life. You're very potent
it does.
force
Yeah.
out there. And
Yeah. I'm lucky.
I appreciate your contributions. You're
Thank
very enthusiastic, a good ambassador. So
you.
thank you so much.
Oh, sure, Diane. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, has Kay got something to say? Because yeah, you're next.
Yeah, I just wanted to share with you. I decided I'd look up as we got started today the definition for philosophy, and I expected it to be pretty highfalutin sounding, and most of them were. But there was this wonderful definition that was so practical and down to earth. I just loved it, and I wanted to share it with you. It's a system of principles for guidance in practical affairs.
A system of principles.
Principles
Okay.
for guidance in practical affairs. Now, that means so much to me because of the way Jesus lived and the things that we are, they're just presented there for us, that we can just pick up and say, oh, I like this one, I want this in my set of principles, the way I'm going to live each day. It's such a simple, down-to-earth explanation for this philosophy of life, which sounds kind of intellectual. But this is a very practical look at it. And it really is a very practical thing, because when you think about how am I going to deal with going to the store, with dealing with people on the phone for whatever thing they've done, which is irritating me now, for just every little practical thing. And that's where our angels are just constantly there, either instigating some of these things or helping us to rise to the moment. And once I began realizing what was going on in my daily life, which has been relatively recent, for as long as I've been reading the book, it's been rather recent, that I've really realized that every day is just full of these opportunities for me to respond in a godlike way or not. I can make those choices over and over again.
So the principle is respond in a godlike way.
Yeah, it's but you have to get your head in that place. And my heart's in the right place. I know that. But you have to get your head in the right place too, to go, oh, this is another opportunity. Yes, indeed. Come on, angels, we can do this. So I really enjoyed your talk, Barry, and I would love to have a copy of it. I'd love for you to write extensively on that, because you had trails that I could tell you would go much further on these things. So let me encourage you. It's an important concept, and I think it's a little scary to a lot of people. So, thanks so much.
I want to comment too in that regard, in that we tend to think that the people who scoff at Jesus are the audience that we want to reach. That's not necessarily so. A great part of the world is open to Jesus, even has a strong prejudice in favor of him, and they still need to know him better. So it could very well be that the real ripe audience is those Christians that we're avoiding, and that we shouldn't be avoiding them. We ought to be feeding them and saying, hey, Jesus is a fantastic guy. He's really here for everybody. The Muslims, especially the Muslims, ought to adopt their belief that Jesus is a prophet and follow it. Wonderful fellow. They're a vast part of the world is open to Jesus, not closed.
All right. Well, thanks, Kay. Thanks, Bill, and thanks, Kay. Let's move on to Tom Vasili. Is that how you say it, Tom?
Yes, you got it right. It's the silly at the end. Um, uh, First of all, I want to thank Barry and Phil and Diane and the UBLA organization for presenting this. And Barry, you gave us a lot of food for thought, and we will want to know how to access the recording of this so we can review it. But what I wanted to share is actually stimulated from a movie I watched, a football coach talking to his team. And this is what I wanted to share. We cannot always be perfect, but we can make a perfect effort to fulfill our ideal philosophy of living and learn by experience how to modify my perfect effort.
Oh,
And it
yeah,
goes along with Doreen, doing the best I can.
that's great. Yes.
Very nice. Very nice.
The perfect effort is what you're focusing on here.
Great.
All right. Well, I think we're ready for you, Rick.
Oh, recording.
Just say it. Before Rick talks, how do we get the recording?
Well, Mark, would you
I'll-
tell us how to get to that place where we do record and we do place them online for anyone to see? You'll see years and years of our productions, actually. So, Mark, would you explain how to get there?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I've collected them over the years on YouTube. And this will be, I will edit this slightly and put a title slide on the front end, and it will be available on YouTube. And you have to search Urantia, UBLA, education on YouTube. Got that? Urantia, UBLA, education on YouTube. And I think there's about 30 or 40 presentations that go back at least 5 years.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
It'll probably be
I'm
up there in
sorry
a
to
week.
interrupt you, Rick. Go ahead, please.
Greetings, fellow agony daunters. We it's been a pleasure being here, Barry. I've seen your name around social media for years and years, and it always has your posts always have a spiritual flavor. I'm wondering, you graduated from Trinity College and in Dublin, and I'm wondering if you're seeing much progress in philosophy, moving toward what we might call the Urantia point of view.
Well, when I was doing my master's, I was in with the Irish School of Ecumenics. And when I raised my desire to use the Urantia book materials, it was pretty much scoffed at. And I was told that if I tried to bring that up, I'd never be taken seriously as an academic. I was disgusted. I don't care if I'm taken seriously as an academic. This is, I mean, this is the School of Ecumenics. I mean, would they say that to a Mormon? Why would they say it to me like that? My Bible was ridiculous, you know? So, how would you say the academia are kind of invested in their uh, intellectual creations, you know, and they something like the Urantia book seriously upsets the order, you know, when it comes to reality. and the frameworks, and in almost every division in terms of science, history, archaeology, astronomy, sociology, anthropology, religion, psychology. The book is so vast; it affects every domain, and I think it manages to key everybody off equally. And it's there's no great appetite for it because, first off, as the lecturer said to me, if you do that, you'll never be taken seriously. Like all these academics, their first place they'll go to is Wikipedia. Right? They'll see the word Gnostic, and that's it. They'll just fuck out. You know, they're they're engaging at a surface level when it comes to the book. And again, they're looking to not believe when they're encountering this stuff. And it's a case of seeking. You will find if your heart is open to finding a life transforming truth, you'll find it. If it's not, you won't. You know, and when it comes to this book, their heart isn't in it. The love of truth isn't in it. Not that way. Or at least maybe it will be eventually. That there will be an appetite, and it could well be that we'll see some astonishing celestial intervention that will provoke query of the book. Because there is a particular statement in the book that says the in the future the Father will give you an enlarged revelation and an enhanced demonstration of righteousness. Now, we have the enlarged revelation. It's our great big book. But what is the enhanced demonstration of righteousness? Is that something that grows out of the community, or is it a celestial event that occurs here? I don't know. And a celestial event would definitely trigger major actions in terms of interest in the book. Um, but there are other ways to kind of get it because when it comes to evolution of tradition and academia, it can very often come from the people. The as the times change, the mores change, and as a result of that, something like even the Catholic Church has to update its doctrines uh, over time. It's always tardy. It's always like it always has to kind of reach a critical point in terms of the cultural experience before the church will update itself to reflect the present mores. But and I think it's the same with the book that the book will gain, the teachings will gain quite a following, and that will create the intellectual pressure then in the academy to have them kind of sit down and say, we need to take a look at this thing. This book is for real. There's something significant going on here. You know, does that help?
Yes, yes.
Great to meet you, Rick. I've been looking
Yeah.
at your postings for years too, by the way.
Ah,
Admiring all your work, admiring all your writing. So you're doing great, and thanks very much. And I
you're
love
welcome.
making any comment to the stuff you post online. Much respect.
How do you like his fan door background?
I noticed it. Yeah, I noticed it. Cool.
Rides are $25 each.
Worth
All
it at
right,
twice the
Sue,
price.
I think you're next.
Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Barry. Awesome. I'm sorry I had to leave my real computer and do the rest of this from the car. But I have a quick question that maybe is not a quick answer, and it goes back to your word construct. I'm so inspired when I hear what we've been talking about today. I know this is our job. I'm puzzled at the next question, which is, that's great. Now what? And as we start constructing, especially with, the next generation that has the same response to the word Jesus that Sherry's friends do, there's got to be a way to start reaching them and appealing to them, a real action step that we're called for. And I just wonder what your point of view is about that. If we could act as a cohesive, coordinated group, what would we do?
As a coherent, cohesive, coordinated group.
No pressure.
No pressure. No pressure. Well, uh, there's a lot in that question. There's a lot in that question. Um, I think like what Sherry was saying earlier about using philosophy as a vector of approach to people because it bypasses their prejudices, you know. And I think that's an important way of coming at people. And the book, in many ways, it's a book of seeds. It has loads of these beautiful little gems that are life-changing in their own way. And we can share these seeds, plant these seeds in the hearts of people as we pass by, if you will. Um, and over time, those seeds would bear fruit. Our lives, the fact that we live in the presence of Jesus, that we have peace, and that we bring a kind of insight and hope and inspiration into everything we do, hopefully, that has an allure. There has to be a spiritual allure of the individuals. What would we do as a group? Like, I think we need to have, there's probably on the horizon some sort of uh, coordinated teaching effort involved, because trying to, how would you say, like, they say the spirit of truth comes and it helps personalize the truth. So you read the book and you kind of find a way of sharing the message that bypasses the individual's filters and prejudices, And I find when I talk with people that they are quite touched and inspired and engaged, and they kind of they begin to question their doubts and their misgivings and their prejudices, about God. And that's my thing, is like, the story of I think it was Simon and Jesus. There was this fella came up from Persia. He was a fire worshipper, or so he thought he was anyway, and he turned around to Jesus and said, "He's so easily listen to you," and he gave me such, he listened to me so much. And he said, "Look, you've got to get people, don't talk about the glories of the temple before they're inside the temple. You've got to get it into their head that they're a child of God. If they can accept that, all other things become possible. But if they can't get that bit, that's the doorway, that's the entry point. If that becomes possible, all sorts of things become possible. But unless you can get that in, then you're wasting your time. You're going to be exciting their prejudices and their resentments and their resistance. So softly, softly, catchy monkey. You catch. You say you catch more bees with honey, and we as a group have got to, I think, develop a cadre of experienced readers and preachers and teachers, and I see what's happening right now in the community, that everybody is working on personal ministry. We're at that phase of development, but we're not at a professional phase of development, and a professional phase of development might necessitate engaging with different groups, where we're in a position to fight our corner in terms of the merits of the revelation. So I think I've discussed with you before, like, there are vectors in terms of different podcasts we can go to raise awareness. The thing is, we need people who are able to speak about the thing in a confident way, not because you see the social media groups. You can often have a situation um, where people use an awful lot of jargon. Your anti-book has got like 8,000 words that nobody else on the planet knows. And if you start using that, people go, "What is wrong with that fella?" So we have to be able to translate the message into a language that people can understand, and that that provides inspiration and hope and courage, and we can do that. And the next step on that, I don't know, because it'll nearly all involve money, and I think that as a community, we need to be looking seriously at, what ventures are worth investing in, and just get the community to say, look, you're going to have to ante up if you want to take this thing to the next level, because right now people are doing the best they can with what they got, but if the community wants it to succeed, the community has to pull together. And it's not just down to the leadership, it's down to all of us. It's down to everybody digging deep to make things happen.
Well, you're young, Barry, so I expect you to be around for a while.
Fingers crossed, we'll see how I do.
Thank you so much for today.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Bill, are there some more hands?
Phil, you're muted.
That'll help. Barb, you haven't talked yet, and I want to give you a chance before we have
Don't let her start. She'll never stop.
Pete's.
Well, I'll try and be succinct, but I just want to share a couple of points about Barry and about Eubla and about why he's even here today. And I had the honor and privilege to be supported to go and meet Barry back in October in Amsterdam. And we were sent there by the International Fellowship Committee because the devotion to that committee to bringing the rest of the world, the non-American world, into our fellowship has been our supreme desire to spread the teachings around the world. And so for 3 days, Sally, Annabella, and Barry and I were like a three-legged stool, as I describe it, and we talked and listened nonstop. And never once did we mention the international conference. That was not our obvious intention. But by the end of it, we said, well, Barry, you have such a great ability and a personification of both a minister and an administrator. And I so appreciate Doreen's comments about just being out there with what you have to say. And I'm a New York City gal, born and bred, and I won't deny it. And so I get ahead of myself and I said, I kindly invite you to consider thinking about coming to our conference because I think you have things to share. And he goes, okay, Barb, I'll kindly consider it, but let's have another beer and talk about it a little bit more. And we proceeded to do so. But the point I'm getting to, the story, is when I got back in October, I called Diane Bishop, become a dear soul friend of mine. And I asked and had some questions and wanted her advice. And I said, I'm trying to get Barry in front of our population and possibly get him to come to the conference. And what do you think about inviting him to the Eubla Zoom? Because you're an example of a society that's changed, that's opened up to the broader world to get more people from around the world to come and be on the Zoom, beyond our aging population and so on and so forth. And could we do this? And she thought that was a great idea. And she gave me a lot of ideas on how to do some other things like fundraising in our community for the international members to come, of which many are coming as plenary speakers, including Barry. So this is a long-winded monologue, I'm sorry, but Barry to me is at that time that many of us on this call are at that age. And we explore this, Diane and I, in a wonderful Zoom that happens on Saturday mornings. Cecilia's in it, Michael Hagan's in it. And it's about the age that we are at. And some of us, most of us might be over 60, maybe over 70, where, the kids are grown. The money's been made or lost. We're in our last great transitional moment in our lives to speak our voice. And it gives me chills because it's speaking the voice of people that have been around a long time in these teachings that have really worked on themselves to do self-mastery and to create a philosophy of living, which I heard Barry talk about this for 2.5 days, this philosophy of living. And it's like, pretty much by now, we kind of may have mastered in some way that philosophy of living and behave accordingly. So I thought it would just be a perfect opportunity, and I'm happy to be here with all of you and to see that. But I would love for Barry to talk a little bit more, while we have still some time, about, Sue kind of mentioned it, but as an organization, to the theme of the conference, and many of you will be there, it's about emergence. And it's emergence from personal to planetary. And it feels like, from what I've been perceiving around the fellowship, we are beyond the place of just sitting, being silent as we have people teach us the Urantia book. We've all been on many, many study courses, And now it just seems like people are speaking really personally. And some of it is about what is not working. We're depressed, or we're anxious, or we're in doubt, or life is hard, and people don't want to hear about Jesus. Barry met the homeless man, and you feel grief. We see the people in the streets. We see them. We see our world. We see our country. We see war. So, what are we to do? What can we do as we develop and take this philosophy of living, not only as a personal thing, but as an emerging to planetary cosmic consciousness? So, Barry, I invite you, if you would like to speak about that a little bit more and elaborate on, your personal embracement of how you're doing this with your Sisters of Mercy, or what you find in Ireland, or things like that.
Okay. Okay. Right. So this thing has to hit mainstream. We know that. And I was writing something the other day. I was writing a thing. I was thinking about the gospel is a lion, and it has been caged by tradition. We need to break down the cage and let the gospel do its own work. And it'll savage this this outmoded forms of religion. It'll bring it into them, I think. Now, part of it is raising awareness, and I think really that there are key areas that we can engage in conversations to raise awareness. I've mentioned this to others, to yourself included. I think that we should be doing podcast circuits, get our best speakers involved in that. That's going to raise awareness of the teachings in like really accelerated way. Okay, like you could start even on the say the lower level podcasts, get get people familiar with the idea and the philosophy and the approach, and get a flavor of the thing, and you'll see things start happening in that direction. The book itself, once it gets into a more mainstream kind of conversation, will create its own movements, its own political movements, its own economic movements, its own institutions. And these things will arise, challenge the hegemony of the current system. We know that they're going to spring out of this book. They've literally given us platforms for new constitutions, new legislatures, new executive planning systems, new ways of integrating the economy and judicial systems. The whole thing is in there. So we know that all the different people that are out there are going to take these things and use them. They'll take the genetic material out of it and use it to construct something that will be in keeping with their ideals. Um, I think that as a community too, we need to foster kind of like a religious identity. I think it's important. There has to be something to belong to, and it is important to have to install a personal philosophy of living, but it's also important to have group events where people can come, where they can share things. Like you look at something like the Catholics or the Muslims, they have Ramadan, they have Lent, they have these group rituals that help shape them and identify them, and they can show, oh, well, I'm one of those people, that's where I belong. They're my group, my clan, my tribe, whatever. So right now there isn't anything to belong to within the Urantia movement, and that's an issue in terms of its ability to form an identity. Um, I think if it once it gets out into the wider community, the spirit will be in a position to act in new ways. You know, um, I think that or there is definitely developing within the wider readership now some experienced speakers and people who are tech savvy and culturally savvy, and a lot of young people that we can capitalize upon. I think the book is really it's a young person's book too. I think because it's not just a young person's book, but it is a young person's book because it's massive, and young people are the only creatures that have the time to read it and to get deep into the lore. If you look at young people, they have like massive knowledge when it comes to something like Warhammer 40K, and that type of kind of mysticism or mythic kind of structures like Lord of the Rings or Star Trek or whatever. There's massive lore associated. Something like the Arenti book kind of appeals to people like that, huge epic undertakings, incredible stories, life-changing kind of paradigm shifts. There's a lot to sell that book, a lot to sell that book, I think. I'm an evangel for the book. I can't help myself, I found something I think the whole world is that's worth sharing with the whole world. So I think it would be a good idea to look at, say, the podcasting. So where do we go with the podcasting? The near death people, they're definitely a venture, because the Arenti book coordinates so much when it comes to the near death experience. You can actually see the mechanics. They're talking about reincarnation and the next life and all that kind of stuff. You can read the Arenti book, and when you're listening to people, you're listening to those stories. Yeah, that's this, that's that. Like a lot of them are flying blind. They don't have the language and the conceptual kind of vocabulary that the Urantia book provides that allows them to understand their experiences in a nuanced way. So I think that that's something going on there. Of course, there's UFO people. I'm a big fan of that, but apparently a lot of people kind of find the Urantia book by that way. You know, that wouldn't be the direction I'd be inclined to go. And then within the Christian traditions, there is a new wave of podcasters that are not, they're anti-Pauline. They don't believe in Pauline theology, the atonement doctrine and stuff like that. They tend to lean more towards Gnosticism and stuff. So there is definitely a window there to have a conversation, and if the conversation is good, it will get published. And that will expose the teaching to wider audiences. I don't know that I buy into the big idea that that a big $20 million advertising campaign is going to do things. I think that's yesterday's methodology for launching the book. I think we have to capitalize on the tech that we have today. Things like the Jesus chatbot is definitely an interesting vector for people. And these kind of the podcasts, and there's Christian podcasts out there that you might be able to explore. And again, you're not going to you have to be delicate with how you handle the conversation, because you don't want to trigger people's anxieties. Like we all know that, especially in America, the problems that have happened for people when once they got involved with the Arithmetic book, about pastors trying to tell their community, you have to read this for their congregation. So there has to be ways to help people capitalize upon the teachings, allow them to integrate the spiritual essence into their ministries, but at the same time doesn't trigger alarm bells in the traditional circles. Like Jesus was saying, you're looking to just plant a seed of truth, not take away from their tradition, but to plant a seed of truth. Find what's in it and embellish it. And I like one of the things that I didn't get to explore this evening was consistency. The Urantia book talks a lot about consistency, and when we're kids or when we're young people and we have questions, we first thing that triggers for us is consistency. We're looking at religious stories and realizing that it's not adding up. The gospel account doesn't add up. There's something off, and we begin to kind of engage more critically, to have doubts, and we want things to be proved to us. And the search for consistency is, in a sense, that's the action of the Spirit of truth leading us. We're following the scent of truth, because when we're eventually approach something like the Urantia book, it has this fantastic unity in its message. It's marvelous, as I say, these exquisite concepts of universe beauty and cosmic truth, or cosmic beauty or universe truth, or whatever it was saying. So our quest for consistency leads us to walk away from traditional religions, because sometimes there's big issues there, and the Urantia book talks about that. It says that Christianity has a difficult time maintaining consistency because it is composed of Babylonian, Jewish, and Greek thinking, all of which are not necessarily congruent with one another. And this creates philosophical problems and theological problems. And when people see them, they kind of go, it's a mess. I just don't want anything to do with it. Whereas we're in a position to re-articulate the story and to integrate everything, you know. And we're really, I think, a massive advantage when it comes to the conversations. And so we're in a position to push the, the substance of the teachings, you know, and eventually it'll get past people's radar, you know, their prejudices, because you know it's like a good idea whose time has come, you know, slowly but surely. Like I mean, did you? I'm sure you all read what's his name, Mo Siegel's address there just a couple of weeks ago. You know, there's like 500 study groups or more all over the planet. There's thousands of readers, thousands of books being sold. This thing went from a handful of people in Chicago almost 100 years ago. Now it's a global phenomenon and it's going to increase and going to grow. And it's capable of remember, the book says it's capable of radical increases and changes, massive adjustments in a short period of time. It can be slow, 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 massive change, you know, and that can happen. And that'll be its own problem, you know, trying to adjust that level of change, you know, because God knows the amount of colorful flora and fauna the book attracts as it is. Just watch the population suddenly increases tenfold in the next 10 years. Like, you know, it's going to be quite an unwieldy thing, you know. Again, one of the advantages it has at the moment is that it doesn't have an orthodoxy, you know. It's standalone. People take from it as they will, you know. They look to the book for inspiration and for you know, for I don't know what else. There's so much in it, you know, but to draw from. But I think that the wider world is getting ready for it. You know, the need, as the book says, they're searching for something that makes more sense to them. They're looking for a better story. You know, we are storied beings. We tell stories about ourselves and about our world. You know, and we like when it makes sense. And the Urenti book allows us to tell a magnificent story. You know, and uh, the world needs that. And I don't think like a lot of people will dive into it for that. It tells a magical story, which I think is massive appeal. But right now we have a situation with tradition. You know, tradition is it's a theological powder keg because uh, traditional Christianity very often leans so heavily on fear and damnation, and for people that's a big problem. You know, it takes a lot of courage to turn your back on traditional religion because to do so will often result in hell. So first class ticket to hell. If you are a Presbyterian and you say and you suddenly go, I can't buy it anymore, well then your rejection is the rejection of salvation. It's not just your change of religions, you're rejecting salvation. You're choosing hell. That's a tough one, you know. So when it comes to handling the theology, it's we got to be sensitive to where people are at in their own spiritual journeys. But eventually, the good of the revelation will break through. It will inspire. It will encourage. People will use the ideas, start new conversations to consider different ideas. Um, so we do have opportunities, I think, and we do have vectors, and to explore. It's just to get the will. Now, one of the things interesting here in Ireland is not Ireland, the UK, Europe. We don't have, and I think we really need to have, like an army of readers that are going to go to the book fairs. You know, that's like a no-brainer. We should have people in every country that are going to be man in the boots and getting the message out there. That should be happening everywhere. We should have an army of people doing it. There has to be. We've some readers in some countries. You know, we should be leaning on these guys. Say, okay, if you can't think of anything better to do, go to a book fair, right? And until you think
Let
of
me
something better, go to a book fair. You
let me
know,
break in here, Barry, because I want to get a chance for both Diane and Michael to have something to say here, and I think
yeah,
that you've covered that material right now.
yeah.
So, Diane, have you got something you want to say? Uh, you have your hand up.
Oh,
Otherwise,
yeah,
we'll go to
thanks.
Michael.
Well, I really appreciate what you just laid out because we were hungry for some guidance on the next step. We've cast about this, that, and the other, but a cohesive set of whys, and you really laid it out here. So thank you so much. I'm sure this is going to influence what we do going forward. And I remember the book fairs; they were a lot of fun. I don't know what happened to them, but my question here is down deep. I am just put it, rubber to the road. What is it we can do? The concrete one, two, three, fours. And my question, first of all, would seem this philosophy of living, it breaks down into some actual steps, one, two, three. And I've discovered the first one being get your body in shape physically. How rude to have your guest as the thought adjuster inhabit a body that's less than the best you can possibly offer it. Even the book says how unkind to pollute your body when the thought adjuster is trying his best to exist in as a prisoner in this physical vehicle. So that'd be step one, get your body in shape and good, the best possible health, mental and otherwise you can, so that you can cooperate in this the capacity for receptivity of those messages. That apparently has to do with a lot of meditation and getting the techniques for how to get in that place of listening and hearing efficiently. So you can get there every day in some technique that you've developed to get there. These are just my best shot. Get your mind ready to listen and get your capacity for receptivity up to par and develop some real courses in how you do that. And then what else? We'd love to know like tomorrow I will begin doing what? Exercising, that's another good one. That's supposed to get all your systems operating in full tilt, mind and body. But a philosophy of living would mean now I'm going to start ABC. And the ABCs of that are not real clear, except that we decide we're going to be a child of God. I mean, if you could bring some like boots on the ground type of things that we can actually schedule into our calendars to start doing or pursuing or creating a course for doing. The fellowship has a theme that we are, and we've adopted it as a society, that we want to, Phil, you got it down, Pat, create a community of, of, of
Spiritual, a spiritual community
there we
to
go, spiritual
learn,
community.
yeah, to support and foster a spiritual community that to learn, share, and live the teachings of the Urantia book.
There you go. So first, how do you learn the book? Well, we kind of got that down. We have you and we have study groups. Now, if there's another high, of course, and we go to conferences. So we're doing a fairly good job of learning, I think. And then sharing the book with others, we're not so good at that. I got exactly 2 converts to my name after 50 years of reading the book. I'm not very good at sharing the book in an effective way. Now, maybe it's more than I know was the result, just conversations I have with people, but I'm not very good at that. We could really use a school of how to talk about the Urantia book in lots of different ways, and we have some attempts at that, but I'm haven't absorbed them, unfortunately. I'd like more of how to do that, how to talk to people about it without turning a hair on fire. And then the sharing the book, and living the teachings. That's the third one. How to really get down and live the book in the day-to-day conversations with your mother, your family, your kids. I'm working on that with working with parents. That's my mission of my life, to get parents to understand what the job is that they have and how significant it is, and what a hugely different life their child will have if they just had incorporated some kinds of examples and teachings and philosophy of living. By the time you're 21, you've got your philosophy of living put together. That would be wonderful. So, everybody's got their spot where they will do their work. but we could really use some upstepping on all three of those to get a real philosophy of living in place and some courses to take and practices to implement. So what would you say? Because your whole talk is on the philosophy of living.
Yeah. So one
What?
of the things I was saying in the earlier on that I highlighted, about self-mastery. We're talking about self-understanding, self-conquest, and self-mastery, or whatever.
Yes, yes, yes.
And but I didn't explore them in detail. I didn't have time in this lecture to explore everything in detail. So my plan will be like to explore that either I can explore that with anybody whenever. If we can talk about it on a Zoom thing. My
Have
plan
you
is to
back?
explore it definitely in July. I was going to do workshops related to that. To kind of flesh it out. What does it actually look like? What do we mean by
Yes,
how
yes.
do what does self mastery look like? And what, like we were talking with was it Sherry earlier about or Cecilia actually about the spiritual practices that we need to keep ourselves spiritually strong and spiritually vital, so that we can do the works. And what are the works, and how are they related to our daily living? Phil was saying there earlier on about the philosophy of life and a philosophy of living. Philosophy of life is kind of like a meta narrative for your life, but the living is the daily chapters, and the how you translate the message into action at a local level. So they're all things that I'm happy to explore with people, and I think it's important uh, to do. Like my thing as always is about helping people realize their own happiness, and that is rooted in their sonship. With God. Um, and like I want to say, yeah, I've been working on that sort of thing for decades. I had a spiritual experience years ago that taught me that happiness lies ultimately in the realization that you're a child of God. That creates everything else. That opens up all the other doors. And I've been learning about the challenges that are inherent in that. So if you're interested, there actually are other lectures online of myself, say stuff that I did over the during COVID. There's like three or four lectures online associated with these teachings, which flesh these out more. You know, if you want to, I can maybe get you the links for them if you like.
Oh,
You can
please,
look
yes,
at them.
If you
yes.
put them in the chat, Barry, they'll be available
Mm,
that way. If you can put that link in the chat, uh,
yeah, I
and
can.
it'll be covered.
Or send an
I
email and give us some links in the email as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I could do that. I'll do it by way of email.
So I'd like to get Michael. He's had his hand up for ever so long, and give him a chance to make a comment. And go ahead, Michael.
Well, Barry, thank you for a great job of taking the master to the people, because you've done in your presentation uh, it, hundreds of ideas of how we can bring this book to life, and not to the life, but to people, especially to know that God is everything. That's the beginning. I've written hundreds of stories based on ways to get that across in an entertaining way to the general population. But you inspired a brand new one when you said that that this revelation of Jesus' revelation is like a wild animal that's been put in a cage. And that right there, that's a metaphor. That's a metaphor I can work with. I'm going to make sure that I get it. Yeah. Thank you so much.
You're most welcome, Michael. Thanks very much. Appreciate that.
All right, thanks, Michael. I put up my hand earlier, but I guess I won't I won't jump in here. I guess Tom has got something else to say. Please be brief because it's already 5. We've been going 2 hours, and I want to get everybody to talk who wants to before we start losing more people.
Okay, I'll be quick. First of all, something to belong to. It seems to me, when absorbing the teachings of the Urantia book, we all have something to belong to, and that's was called the kingdom of heaven, but very more specifically, it's the family of God. And it includes all of us on the call, all mortal beings, but it also includes our unseen friends. And I feel I belong to that family of God. I volunteered to be a team member of it, and I really feel that that's what I belong to. I can also get involved with organizations and so forth, but it's all under the umbrella of the greater family of God and working with our unseen friends who are, I'm convinced, working hard to help this revelation transform our world. Um, the other thing I had is just kind of just a question, something to ponder. When Barry mentioned about the passage where Jesus says, "First bring the person to be accept that they're a child of God before you start teaching them about the kingdom." It seems to me that letting a person know that they're a child of God is a beginning, but I'd also think that it's important to let them know you can have a relationship with the creator of the universe. And I think that's an important thing to let folks know that they are a child of God and they can have a relationship with him.
Very good. Yes.
Yes, it doesn't necessarily dawn on people that if you're a son of or a child of God, that you can speak to God and God can speak to you.
Exactly.
All right, Kay, or Bill.
I just wanted to mention one thing that over the years is I've settled on as a really good entry point, and that is that if some of us become a resource for parents in raising their children, we come in at the first point in a young person's life when they start looking for some help is when they become parents. They return to church at that time. If they're going to church, they need help. And so that would be a really good time with at the beginning of childbearing to be a resource for the parents and to teach them how to bring their children up with the philosophies of the Emergence book and even more, so that you don't have to so much accept the book even, but we can seed the important spiritual concepts from the book into the population that way. So I just wanted to share that with everybody because it's an important concept to me.
Well, thank you, Kay.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to throw something in here myself because we've been flittering around it, and then Sue asked the question about how we can, as a group, proceed. Um, and I think that's very different. Uh, Personal religious activities, as for instance, Doreen was referring to, is something that we can really do as, living, treating each person we meet as a child of God, giving them that dignity is going to affect them and affect us. And it's not something we can do so easily as a group. What we do as a group is one thing, but what we can do individually, use the interruption, we can what we can do individually seems, I guess it's really something different. When we meet some person and it's a one-to-one or a one-to-many, but especially one-to-one, we can really live the teachings. We can really live the love of God for that person. I don't know how to do that as a group. I think when we get to be a group, our things are limited what we can really accomplish. It's the riverbed, not the river. The spiritual water is what is flowing between us. When we get to a religious group, I think we're in the riverbed now. Not that it's not good and important. We need the riverbed too. We're so backwards as a people. We need everything, all the help we can get. We need to be reminded. We need the churches to be reminded that we're still children of God. But if we can live more aware of who we are and what we're doing, I think that's a very important piece. And so I think of the organization more as a stratified and very broad, and that it pops up with little groups of people who want to help the politics or want to help the science or want to help the sociology or the art or whatever. They can do it as a little group of people, of religionists, of Urantia book readers. But as a whole, I think, we translate, we have conferences, get people together. I'm not sure how much more we can do as a group, although, Jeanette Reed has been teaching and training people how to introduce Jesus of the Urantia book. And I think maybe I'm going to ask her to give us a quarterly talk next time, because I think she has a lot going for her in that regard. End of speech.
Well, thank you, Phil.
All right. I don't see any more hands up. And so we are, there's a hand. Okay, Timothy?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm probably the least familiar to the rest of you here. I live in Boise, Idaho, and I began my Urantia reading journey in 1971, halfway around the world in Turkey on a mountaintop. And I began my poetic journey addressing Barry for a moment, and thank you, Barry, for a very thoughtful presentation. I began my poetic journey in 1972, February, and have been writing poetry steadily, well over 1,000 Urantia-based poems over the last 54 years. So I wanted to share with you that when I first started writing, it was chaotic and it seemed most unguided. And I had a hard time understanding what I was writing. I literally inhaled the Urantia book over the next 3 or 4 decades, not once, but many times. And as I began to write more and more all the time, what used to take over the decades 6, 8, 10, 12 quatrains, I now can compress in 1 or 2, and the majority of my writings presently, or in what I call now time, is 1 quatrain, a very compressed meaning. So I wanted to share what I got out of Barry's presentation, if you all would be interested in hearing.
Love to. Go ahead.
Your poem, I'm sure, is going to be shorter than a lot of our talking, so go ahead.
Yeah, I hope that you find it beneficial, and if you'd like, I can also leave my
phone number,
my Gmail address, or even phone number and Gmail address. I'd love to speak with all of you a lot more on these subjects, as I don't really have anybody, here that I can do that with. I would just mention before I read the poem, that I've been preparing for 75 years to begin my nomadic journey. I'm selling everything. I've been planning for the last year and a half to reduce everything to the bare necessities that I need to go forward. And so I will be journeying out into the world, just wherever I believe that my thought adjuster and the will of the Father is leading me. And we'll be engaging with people directly and living my philosophy of living as I have tried to do over the decades. So, with that in mind, I will read the poem Generosity. And in parentheses, the now time act of doing good as you pass by. And everything I've been writing for the last 5 or 6 months is under the subheading of Godward with God words, GODWRDS. How does one live in the inner light of God? Self-understanding, self-conquest, self-mastery, and self-bestowal of one's life, to soul-mind encouragement and possibility clarifying. Virtue is right useness, the ideals of transformed living in truth light. The tempered will, quiet dignity, and clear-hearted intent versus sex, drugs, and out of control are the three great emancipators that birth a philosophy of living in juxtaposition to a philosophy of life. The first sums, the second requires but belief, self-importance, or selfless generosity.
All right, thank you.
Well, that gets to the point. That that really condenses it all down. Wonderful. Can you share that?
Like I said, if I can get back to it, I will share my phone number and Gmail, and I'd love to send it to you along with what I call the Spirit Whisper seal, which I add to every one poem, to each poem, and also before the poem is done, I develop a teaching module, which is part of what I plan to do when I'm on the road.
Oh, great. Now, there's some emails at the bottom of the announcement that talk about study groups, but perhaps you could use one of those emails to send us what you're sending us.
Yeah, I'm not that familiar with Zoom, so I'm having a hard time. I've been kind of fooling around with it and kind of lost my way here, trying to get back to the chat.
Yeah,
So if
it's
I
at the
can,
bottom there. You ought to see where it says chat.
here we go. Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, if you could just paste it in there, we'll have it.
Now, how do we get the chat once the thing is ended? I've never been able to get back to the chat entries. So if you could tell us all how to get all these wonderful comments that are in the chat once this is over.
I'll be able to do that. I can send it to Mark, and he can put it up, or I can send it out to everybody.
That would be
Okay.
good. Yeah, send it out if you could.
All right, I added my name, phone number, and Gmail for you.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all of that poem writing and all the preparation you've made to be where you are today. What a life.
Thank you. It's just what I felt led to do over the decades.
Well, now we'll all benefit from that. Thank you. And keep on keeping on. Keep us posted of your adventures.
Yeah, I plan to write several books about all of it. So,
I bet you two will. Take good care of yourself. Stick around.
well, let me share one more thing with you then. There's so much about the path that I have traveled that I feel is so fortuitous. Good fortune has followed me. And in 1979, I actually literally went from sex, drugs, and out of control to memorizing the 28 principles. It took me a year to memorize them and internalize them. But once I did that, they began to become a living part of me. And one of the great changes I made by 1982 was the change in philosophy from living to eat to eating to live. And as a result, over the last 54 years or so, I have not required medication of any kind, a doctor of any kind. I have been sickness free.
Hey, good for you. That's my philosophy too.
So, this is so good for me because I live my philosophy. And there's one other thing that I would share with you, and it has to do with a passage from paper 110, if I can get back to it real quick. And I think that this is really pertinent to what we've been discussing here today. And this passage will be familiar to all of you. You, as a personal creature, have mind and will. The adjuster, as a pre-personal creature, has pre-mind and pre-will. If you so fully conform to the adjuster's mind that you see eye to eye, then your minds become one, and you receive the reinforcement of the adjuster's mind. Subsequently, if your will orders and enforces the execution of the decisions of this new or combined mind, the adjuster's prepersonal will attains to personality expression through your decision. And as far as that particular project is concerned, you and the adjuster are one. Your mind has attained to divinity attunement, and the adjuster's will has achieved personality expression. I've thought long and hard about that, and I would add that one of the unusual things about my relationship to the Urantia book was that I fought with it. I almost gave up reading it in the first year. And I struggled with it every step of the way, asking a multitude of questions and always, well, what does that mean? I heard somebody else say that in the group. Always asking questions, well, what does that mean? And then leaving it alone for a while and coming back and looking at it again and struggling with it some more. I did that with all of the 28 principles in paper 48. And so one day, all of a sudden, it was like a spontaneous breakthrough, which I experience all the time these days. A spontaneous breakthrough that, well, what is the greatest project of this this path that I'm walking? And that is my life. My life is the project. It is the supreme project, that divine partnership between my thought adjuster and myself. And so I began to invite the thought adjuster into my life path project. My life is the project. And it has been profoundly transforming. I invite you to think about that.
All right. Well,
Yeah,
thanks a lot, Tim, or
it
Tim.
is a lot.
Those that's gives us quite a bit to think about. Tom, do you have something else to say? I'm beginning to feel as though we need to wrap this up. It's 5:19, and I don't want to just go on so long that people are getting tired.
Yeah, I'll be real quick.
Yeah.
I'm responding to some things that Timothy said, and this has been emerging to me, and I don't know sure how accurate it is, but in my prayer life, my will is to do God's will, and then in asking Him what is His will for me, I've gotten the answer that if your will is to do my will, then my will is doing your will. In other words, make your decisions, start trying to do my will, and I'm with you. And I'll let you know when you get off path.
Hmm, very clear.
Very good, Tom.
All right. Good. All right. I guess we have. I think we've gone through it all, and I haven't. Let's see. What shall we have a prayer to end this?
I bet Barry has some good prayers.
I'm gonna raise a glass to our Creator's Son, who asked us to remember him whenever we got together. So thank you, Jesus.
And thanks to our unseen friends.
And the technology gods who kept us all online here. And the wonderful people who responded to our invitation. You'll be getting another invitation in 3 months, so we'll have a June quarterly speaker. And then we gain from each one so very much. And we do invite you to go onto the site and check out the ones that preceded this and to continue on with our future ones that will also be posted. Your comments have been just phenomenal. Such wisdom and such experience right here on this call. We've been gathered together probably by our angels hustling us along to show up. And it's memorable for me, certainly. I have much, much to take away from this. And expect a call or an email or two from me because I want to know more about things that you said. This has been a privilege to have you all.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Barry. Love you
All
all.
right, everyone. Thank
Go.
you all. I'm going to end the meeting, and then I'll be able to send out the recording. Well, I'll send it to Mark, who do a little bit of. Sometimes when whenever I have my study group, I just send it to everybody on my study group list. But today is a different, and I'll send this to Mark, and he will put it out for us. So thank you all, and have a good and live a good day.
Yeah, live a good day. We love you all.
Thanks everybody for having me. Great talk. And
Thank
look forward
you.
to
Thank you,
seeing you all
Barry.
again.
I love you, my
Extraordinary
friends.
talk.
Great people. Okay, have a good night. It's gone midnight here. Mind yourselves, folks. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.